On the flower boat, the sound of the people was as delicate as jade beads rolling on a plate. Before the singer could finish her verse, a commotion erupted at the bow. An uninvited guest barged in with a blade, causing the dancers to kneel in fear, their bodies trembling like leaves in the wind.
Jason Collins, you seem to be enjoying yourself.
I remained calm, stood up, and bowed to greet her.
Greetings, Princess Olivia.
As soon as I finished speaking, the curtain was lifted by the hilt of a sword, and Princess Olivia walked in. She was dressed in a red outfit, her long black hair tied into a ponytail, giving her a sharp and spirited look. Princess Olivia, whose real name was Sophia, was the daughter of Prince Jean. She grew up on the frontier among soldiers and was sent to the capital at the age of 8. She disliked makeup and preferred wielding weapons, handling matters with a straightforward approach, even daring to storm into a flower boat. Princess Olivia didn't spare me a glance and sat directly in my seat, questioning me.
Did you know that news just came in that Crown Prince William was attacked by ruffians outside and almost got hurt? Your master is suffering outside, and you have the nerve to indulge in pleasure in the capital.
She grabbed my wine cup and smashed it in front of me. The crisp sound of the porcelain cup shattering frightened the delicate musicians even more, causing them to bury their heads deeper. The wine in the cup splashed out, staining my clothes. But I still didn't say a word in defense, keeping my head down, looking weak and submissive, acknowledging my mistake. Seeing my submissive demeanor, she became even more furious.
All you do is indulge in women. Everyone in the city knows about your romantic escapades, with 3 or 4 mistresses. If it weren't for the Crown Prince's childhood affection for you, protecting you, you would have been dealt with long ago. Now that he's not in the capital, you don't worry about him and even cause him trouble. No wonder the Crown Prince doesn't want to take you on his Western tour. You never reflect on why, as the Crown Prince's companion, you still don't have a proper position. You deserve it.
I knew that Princess Olivia's visit wasn't to give me advice but to find an excuse to scold me, easing her worries about the Crown Prince. This was also why the Crown Prince left me behind.
Jason acknowledges his mistake. Thank you, Princess, for your guidance.
Seeing my sincerity, Sophia's anger subsided. She stood up to leave, sighing as she turned.
Jason, we grew up together, but why did you end up like this?
She turned to look at me, her eyes full of pity.
Although you and Lillian are not destined to be together, you shouldn't give up on yourself. She won't like it, Sai.
Jason stood in the grand hall, his head bowed in humility.
Relieved, thank you, Princess, for your guidance. I acknowledge my mistake.
Sophia's anger subsided as she saw his sincerity. She sighed deeply before she stood up to leave.
Sad, Jason, we grew up together, but why did you end up like this?
She turned to look at him, her eyes filled with pity.
Hopeful, although you and Lilian are not meant to be, you shouldn't give up on yourself. She wouldn't want that, Sai.
When the Crown Prince was out enjoying himself, someone needed to soothe the women he left behind in the capital. And I became the best candidate for the job. Whether it was the official Crown Princess candidate or his other companions, I bore the brunt of his romantic entanglements. In the end, I was left with only the title of the Crown Prince's study companion, with no prospects for a political career.
Jason knows his mistake. Thank you, Princess Olivia, for your guidance.
Jason, we 4 grew up together. How did you end up like this?
He turned to look at him, her eyes full of pity.
Even though you and Lilian are not destined to be together, you shouldn't let yourself fall so low. She wouldn't like it, Sai.
Jason acknowledged his mistake.
Thank you, Princess, for your guidance.
Seeing his sincerity, Sophia's anger subsided. She stood up to leave, sighing as she turned.
Jason, we grew up together, but why did you end up like this? Although you and Lilian are not destined to be together, you shouldn't give up on yourself. She wouldn't like it.
I woke up in the middle of the night, realizing that my dream had left a mess on my undergarments. Resigned, I got up to change my clothes. After a bath, the restlessness in my heart still had no outlet, so I decided to practice swordsmanship in the courtyard. Under the cover of darkness, a graceful figure landed lightly in the courtyard. It was Princess Olivia, Sophia.
What a coincidence, Jason, you're still awake too.
She smiled at me, overlapping with the scenes from my dream. Embarrassed, I quickly turned my head away.
Princess Olivia, it's late and not safe. You should go back and rest.
Do you dislike me so much that you don't even want to look at me?
I didn't understand why she thought that. Such weak words didn't seem like something Sophia would say. Could it be that the effects of the medicine from that night hadn't completely worn off?
I remember we were so close when we were young. Even though you were the Crown Prince's study companion, you always protected me first, even getting punished for it. Is it because of Lillian? That day, you saved her first. Do you know how scared I was, alone in that den of evil?
I realized I had indeed been too reckless that night. Daring to enter the enemy's lair alone, if anything had gone wrong, it would have put them in even more danger. And every time I saved one person, I left the other in peril. Sophia's doubts were understandable.
I'm sorry, it was my incompetence that failed to protect you and Miss Lillian. I didn't think things through when rescuing you. Please forgive me, Princess.
Sophia became even more annoyed, grabbing my collar.
You've kept 3 or 4 companions already. How can you still be so dense? No, those companions are.
She stopped mid-sentence, suddenly deflated.
Forget it, forget it. It's not urgent. You can go.
Princess, this is my home.
Then go back to sleep. I want to enjoy the moon here, is that not allowed?
Of course, of course.
Watching Sophia's changing expressions, I felt a sense of wonder. It turned out that the princess also had a delicate side, capable of such mood swings. But looking at the starless night, I doubted she would see the moon as she wished.
I should still escort you back.
Very well.
After a moment of silence, Sophia regained her usual carefree demeanor.
It's been a while since we sparred. Let's have a match at the training ground tomorrow.
I nodded in agreement. Yes, this was the Princess Olivia I knew.
We never made it to the training ground. As soon as I woke up, I was blindfolded and taken away. Before the sun reappeared, I was calculating in my mind which enemy I had encountered. Could it be from Hua Chonglu? The cloth covering my eyes was removed, and I looked up to see Lilian sitting gracefully in the main seat, her fingers delicately holding a teacup.
Miss Lillian, what is this about?
Lilian didn't look at me, focusing on skimming the tea leaves with a porcelain lid. She took a sip before speaking.
My father is worried about my safety and won't let me leave. I couldn't come to see you, so I had to bring you here.
Compared to Sophia's erratic behavior last night, Lilian's usual noble and cold demeanor reassured me.
Is there something you need me to do, Miss Lillian?
I wanted to ask if anything happened that night.
It seemed Lilian was here to remind me to keep that night's events a secret. Although the Crown Princess candidate was still undecided, the betting houses had already opened. Lilian, who studied etiquette and household management, was favored to become the Crown Princess far more than Sophia. She must be determined to win and couldn't afford to be dragged down by someone like me.
I've been going to bed early these past few days and haven't left the house. Miss Lillian can rest assured, the Crown Prince has always instructed me to take good care of you and follow your orders.
Lilian listened and then laughed coldly.
That night, I clearly, yet you deny it. You are indeed loyal to the Crown Prince, a good dog.
Her emotions suddenly flared up.
Jason, you are truly heartless. We grew up together, after all. If I had no connection with the Crown Prince, would you even care about my well-being? I should have asked the crown prince to bring you to me and then had you punished. Only then would you obediently stay by my side.
Lillian, who always maintained her composure, lost her temper in front of me. She never spoke like this. Now she looked at me mockingly, hurling insults. When I first saw the delicate and refined Lillian, I felt a desire to be close to her. Her strict upbringing meant she had to abstain from indulgences at a young age. I saw her longing gaze at other children eating pastries while she dared not eat any herself. I bought a candied hawthorn from a street vendor and secretly brought it into the palace. Unexpectedly, Lillian's first reaction upon seeing it was to report me to the tutor. I was severely punished with 10 strokes of the ruler.
There must be rules and order. I'm doing this for your own good. The palace is different from the outside world.
Sophia also stepped in, disapproving of Lillian's fussiness, and scolded me.
How can you bring such unclean things from commoners into the palace?
The distinction between ranks was an insurmountable gap between me and them. I could only become more cautious, becoming the wooden block they referred to. Between us, there would only ever be the relationship of ruler and subject. I remained silent.
Wooden block, truly a piece of rotten wood.
Are you like this with Sophia too?
I don't want to hear it. You may leave.
Before I left, Lillian regained her dignified and aloof demeanor, as if her earlier questioning was just an illusion. After that night, I felt that something was off with both Lillian and Sophia. Thinking of Sophia, I remembered our agreement and hurriedly went out, seeing her waiting near the Prime Minister's residence as if she had known all along. Once in the carriage, Sophia scrutinized me before tentatively asking,
Did Lilian say anything to you?
Miss Lillian seemed to be in a bad mood.
Sophia immediately understood and even chuckled.
It's nothing. She'll figure it out on her own. Don't worry about her. Let's go to the training ground.
When I returned to the residence that night, just as Sophia had said, Lillian seemed to have come to some realization and sent a pile of rare treasures as an apology. I returned them, but she sent even more. With 3 boxes of items, I didn't know what to do. Sophia joined in the fun, sending several boxes of weapons. They seemed to be competing, sending increasingly rare and peculiar items. Meanwhile, I lived in constant fear in the residence. Not long after, the peaceful days were disrupted. The Crown Prince was reported for embezzlement, frequenting brothels, and even coercing women into inappropriate acts, as well as the absurd act of writing the world's beautiful courtesans. The emperor was furious and had him brought back overnight, stripping him of his title and imprisoning him. All those involved in his western expedition were investigated. As the Crown Prince's confidant, I was also implicated. Both the King of Jean and the Prime Minister spoke on my behalf. In the end, I was punished with 20 strokes and sent home to reflect on my actions. As I lay in bed recovering, the past few days felt like a dream. The great burden of the Crown Prince was lifted from my shoulders so easily. I had no connections with the King of Jean or the Prime Minister, so why did they help me? The Crown Prince's downfall must have been their doing. Could it be that Sophia and Lillian said something? Weren't they deeply in love with the Crown Prince? Surely it wasn't for my sake? As my thoughts wandered, a commotion arose outside. The next moment, Sophia burst in, triumphantly addressing Lillian, who was a few steps behind.
Haha, I won, didn't I?
Lillian glanced at her, smoothed her already neat hair, and walked slowly towards me.
Jason, are your injuries severe?
Sophia, having been preempted, rushed to my bedside, trying to lift my blanket.
Let me see how bad it is.
Jason couldn't move quickly enough to stop her. Sophia, being a martial artist, tore his inner garment with little effort. Without the cover, they could see the fresh wounds on his body, revealing even more shocking old scars beneath. Although he practiced martial arts, he was essentially a civil servant, yet his scars resembled those of a seasoned soldier.
How did this happen?
Sophia couldn't help but cover her mouth in shock. Lillian bit her lip, thinking of something.
Did you take the punishments for us since we were kids?
It has nothing to do with you. These are all my due.
The Crown Prince had always acted boldly and recklessly since childhood. Minor misdeeds went unchecked, and the punishments eventually fell on Jason. When his actions escalated, he ultimately faced the consequences himself.
We were blinded by his gentlemanly facade since childhood, not realizing he was rotten inside. Poor Jason has been bearing it all for him.
Who told him to be so wooden, never saying anything, and pretending to be a romantic gentleman?
I'm sorry, Jason. I shouldn't have believed those illusions.
Lillian was so shocked by her words that she widened her eyes. She opened her mouth but couldn't bring herself to apologize.
I'll take care of you while you recover.
You're so clumsy, don't make his injuries worse. Let me do it.
Do you, a sheltered lady, know how to take care of someone?
Do you?
The two noble ladies suddenly started arguing in front of Jason. In the end, they left him to compete outside, arguing over the content of the competition, from poetry and painting to martial arts, none of which were suitable. Somehow, it ended up being a cooking competition. Jason couldn't tell if they wanted to take care of him or harm him. After Jason recovered, he learned that the kidnappers of Sophia and Lillian were actually victims whose families had been forced into unfortunate circumstances by the Crown Prince. Their revenge targeted the Crown Prince's women. The Prime Minister and Prince Jean didn't spare the kidnappers, nor did they spare the Crown Prince. Such actions made him unfit to be the heir, let alone their daughter's husband. The marriages of Sophia and Lillian were completely cancelled, and there was no shortage of suitors. As they approached marriageable age, their families were in no hurry to settle on new matches. Moreover, the two ladies frequently visited Jason's home. But Jason only wanted to focus on his studies to take the imperial examination next year. Sophia and Lillian finally quieted down, only delivering meals and books without much disturbance. As the seasons passed, everything settled, and Jason awaited the exam results.
Let's go fishing in the countryside.
Yes, let's go.
Jason gladly accepted. They were in rare high spirits, admiring flowers by the lake. When Jason turned to get the fishing rod, Sophia accidentally fell into the water. The maids by the lake were all helpless, unable to swim.
Help, Jason, save me.
Jason had no choice but to dive into the lake. As he approached to pull her ashore, she grabbed his neck in the water. Although it was to save her, their close contact in public was damaging to her reputation. Sophia, however, didn't seem to care at all. She blew a breath on Jason's neck.
Jason, you really do worry about me.
She smiled brightly, showing no trace of the panic from earlier. Jason remembered that Sophia had learned to swim at the age of 8 and had once dared to catch fish in the Imperial Gardens pond, for which he had been punished with 10 strokes.
Sophia, this is not funny. Let go of me.
Annoyed, Jason wanted to leave, but Sophia held him tightly. Their clothes were useless at this moment, her warm body pressed against his in the cold lake water, and he could feel every softness of her form.
Jason, this is the second time. You have to take responsibility for me.
Sophia, you once told me you didn't want to be confined within high walls, that you wanted to fight on the battlefield and become an invincible general. But now you're acting like those inner court women, trying to bind others with love. You're not binding me, you're binding yourself.
Sophia's smile faded as Jason's words hit home, and she loosened her grip on him. On the shore, Lillian seemed lost in thought. Seeing that they hadn't come up yet, she jumped into the water. Unlike Sophia, she really couldn't swim. Jason hurriedly pulled her up.
Why did you jump in? You're just causing trouble.
Lillian, still in shock, clung to Jason, gasping for breath. His words weren't harsh, but she immediately teared up, looking at him with grievance.
Can't I? Why can Sophia do it, but I can't? From childhood to now, Why can she live so freely, and everyone likes her? Why can't I?
Water dripped from her wet hair, down her cheeks, neck, and shoulders. Even in her disheveled state, Lillian was as beautiful as ever. Her tearful gaze made one feel utterly guilty. Despite being praised as a talented and virtuous woman, she lived with the shackles of convention, her heart filled with unspoken sorrow. Her childish rivalry with Sophia was more about yearning for a different life.
Miss Lillian, if you wish, the inner court can't confine you. I know your talents better than anyone. The world is vast, and you can explore it freely. If you want, I can help you.
Lillian's eyes brightened, and Jason saw her old spirited self return. He led the two of them ashore. They tacitly agreed not to mention what had happened in the lake.